Hey, welcome once again, everybody, to another episode of B&B Hockey Talk. I'm Aaron Blocks with my co-host, Mr. Matt Balzer. Well, the news, the hammer, it finally dropped in Edmonton, and Ryan Spooner got sent down to Bakersfield. Of course, we're talking about Peter Chiarelli getting the axe in Edmonton after lots of speculation. We talked last show about some of his brutal trades that he's made, and Matt, what do you say about that? And who are the front runners to take over his job, which, by the way, is being run right now by Bob Nicholson and, of course, assistant general manager Keith Gretzky.
Yeah, so it finally happened. I think they just saw Jeremy Roenick destroying them during the intermission. It was just like that's it. We can't take it anymore. But yeah, the possible candidates, the big names that I saw thrown out there is Kelly McCrimmon, who's the assistant general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights. I think he's the front runner. I think right now, just from what I've seen throughout all social media. And then we have Mark Hunter, the general manager of the London Knights, and he was assistant general manager with the Toronto Maple Leafs for the past few years. Before that, Ron Hextall, who was fired by the Philadelphia Flyers this year. I think he actually did a pretty good job with the Flyers in where they were heading through the draft over the past few years. It's just that the Flyers were a little bit more impatient with where things were going at that time. Mike Fuda, who's the assistant general manager with the LA Kings. His name's popped up a lot for some other jobs, but he sort of likes it in LA, so I would be surprised if he leaves. And the last guy I'll throw out there is Lawrence Gilman, assistant general manager for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we know him from here in Vancouver, helping Mike Gillis make some really good deals throughout the years during the Canuck glory years.
Cap specialist, if I remember, and boy, Edmonton sure can use a cap specialist right now. Joking aside, Spooner was sent down to the minors, and I believe Caleb Jones as well, freeing up some potential cap space. Is Sekera any closer to coming back?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten any official news, but people are saying he was really close. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him back after the All-Star break and the bye week. I believe Edmonton has the bye week after the All-Star break as well. So by the time February comes around, I'd expect Sekera to be in the lineup for the Oilers. But yeah, Ryan Spooner, 25 games played, 2 goals, 3 points. And he still has one more year, just over $2 million, with the Rangers eating half of his cap hit over the next year. So it's a tough trade there with Ryan Strome, who has 11 points in 29 games played with the Rangers since getting traded. So yeah, it's pretty tough if you're an Oilers fan over the past few years with all those trades by Chiarelli.
Well, Clefbaum also, I believe, will be back probably mid to late February. That'll definitely help their blue line. Chiarelli, is it good or bad that he's gone? Like, what, was it that much of a disaster in Edmonton?
Oh yeah, like I'll throw out some names and there'll be a few numbers here. But yeah, if we just go right off the top. Griffin Reinhart for the number 16 and 33 pick back in 2015. The Islanders drafted Matt Barzal, as we know, and they traded that 33 overall pick to move up in the draft in the first round to get Anthony Beauvillier, who's also turned into a really nice NHL player as well. And Griffin Reinhart went on to play 29 games with the Edmonton Oilers and got 1 assist. And then Vegas took him in the expansion draft. And he hasn't played in a game in the NHL since then. And then you got the Taylor Hall for Adam Larson trade. Taylor Hall, league MVP last year. And then, of course, the Jordan Eberle trade, which we got into last show. And then we go to Drake Caggiula, who they traded earlier this year to the Chicago Blackhawks. He had 7 goals, 11 points in 29 games played this year. Before they traded him to Chicago for Brandon Manning was the main get back. And he's played in 8 games, only has 1 point, -4, and is a -18 on the year, and it still has 1 more year left at $2.25 million. and then the other minor trades with Chris Weidman, where they gave up a 2026 round pick to get him from Ottawa, and then they shipped him over to Florida for Alex Petrovic, who's a -7 in 6 games played with the Oilers this year. But they also sent a 2019 third-round pick to Florida, so they lost 2 draft picks for basically nothing, with Petrovic being a UFA at the end of the year, and there's no way they're bringing him back. And then you go back to even more further back in the history, Justin Schultz of the Pittsburgh Penguins, for the 2016 third-round pick. That third-round pick turned into Marcus Niemelainen, who is yet to play in an NHL game. He's overplaying in Finland. He has 3 assists in 32 games played there this year. And then, the one decent trade was Cam Talbot. In the first 2 years, he was really good for the Oilers, but his numbers have really gone downhill this year, with his save percentage below 900 and his goals against average above 3. So, that's just the trades right there. I'll let you bounce off that.
Well, just with goaltending, I mean, Cam Talbot, he seemed to put together 1 year, but I didn't think that he was a true number 1 just yet in the NHL. He's starting to prove that. They do have Koskinen, who they just signed to that multi-year deal. That's another story, another disaster. But they've got 2 goalies now that I think are kind of like a 2A and a 2B. I wonder if the new regime that comes in, if they go after a better goaltender, because you got to start from the back end out, do you not? I mean, Edmonton's got a weak defense. Their goaltending's questionable. There's so much pressure on the forwards, and I feel so bad right now for Connor McDavid, because according to Jeremy Roenick, nobody knows how to think the game on the Edmonton Oilers. He really did rip him a new one. So,
Go ahead. Yeah. So to get into Koskinen's numbers, where it's just bizarre that the contract comes a day just before Chiarelli gets fired, and he started off really well. Like his first 16 games, he was 11-3-1 with a .930 save percentage. But his last 12 games that he's played in, he's 3-8 with an .880 save percentage. And that earns you a 3-year, $13.5 million contract extension with a limited no trade clause of up to 15 teams. So it's, as much as they want to try to fix the goaltending situation, like Cam Talbot's a UFA at the end of the year, but it's going to be tough with that contract for Koskinen. You're going to have to, I think, live with him and then maybe try to get a good, cheap 1B goalie this year in free agency.
Well, I think quick poll question here. I'll probably post it on our Facebook page in a little while. But which Peter was best, Chiarelli or Pocklington for the Edmonton Oilers? I mean, everybody still hates Peter Pocklington in Edmonton, right, for the Wayne Gretzky trade.
Oh, yeah, that's that one's a little bit over my head, just the name wise. But yeah, it's like Chiarelli, man. It's just it's bad. Just like I'll go into some of the signings here, like as well. Like you got the Lucic deal. He only has 5 goals, 12 points in 50 games this year. Still 4 more years left on that contract. 6 years, $6 million a year, and that's basically buyout proof because of all the signing bonuses per year, basically. So, and then you go to Chris Russell, who still has a few more years at $4 million. But he has basically a no trade clause for the first 2 years of his contract, and then moves to a limited no trade clause in his last 2 years. So that's a guy that you would want to move out for something. And then they still have some buyout money against the cap. Benoit Pouliot, remember that contract still is up against the cap for the next 2 years at $1.33 million per year. And then Eric Gryba, for some reason, they bought him out. He had 1 year left at $900K. He's still against the cap for 1 more year at $300K. It's just, man, and that's not even getting into some of their draft choices over the past few years.
Well, it's definitely a mess. Talking to some Oiler fans today, they were saying that as a Canucks fan, that we're lucky that we're actually ahead of where they are at now. And that's after they've had all those first overall draft picks and everything. Man, so I don't even know where they're going to start in Edmonton. Obviously, they need to find a replacement for Chiarelli, somebody that's competent, and it'll be interesting to see what they do between now and the end of the year. And at the trade deadline, I'm curious to see what they are. I mean, obviously, they're not out of the playoffs yet. In fact, everybody in the Western Conference, from the first wild card down to the last place, there's only an 8-point difference. I think everybody is still mathematically has a chance, and I think a couple of teams are probably going to be going on some winning streaks to get those spots. So Anaheim's one of those ones that I see. I mean, they've got Corey Perry back now skating with the team, going to return soon. That's going to give them a big bit of a boost. They're for the first time, they're almost healthy. I know the Canucks are finally healthy. Those are the two worst injured teams in the league. And I think with the stretch down the run, the stretch down the back end of the schedule here, you're going to see some teams run into some injury problems. And as a Canucks fan, I'm glad we've got most of our major road trips out of the way. So we still have, even after the 6-game road trip, we still have lots of home games left to finish out the season, which I think will help for injury situation. It gives some big minutes, some potential big game ice time to a lot of the young guys. But anything else on Edmonton you want to deliver before we move on?
That was just about it, but I'll just go over some of their drafting between 2012 to 2015, just to show like how bad it's been, because that's a big thing that we see like in today's age is it's like you have to get players through the draft to continually continue to get better every year. But if you go all the way back to 2012, they had 7 picks. The only guys that play in the NHL: Nail Yakupov, who's now in Russia, Juhar Kiara, who's actually been having a decent year for the Oilers this year, but he's more of a bottom 6 player, and Eric Gustafson, who never played a game for the Oilers, but is ripping it up for Chicago this year, at least offensively, basically a point every second game for the Blackhawks. 2013, they had 10 picks. You had Darnell Nurse was the big get there in the first round. And then the only other 2 guys that to play in the NHL, Bogdan Yakimov, who played 1 game and is now in the KHL, and Anton Slepyshev, who showed some promise, but now he's over in Russia as well. 2014, they had 6 picks. Leon Draisaitl is the only guy to play in the NHL out of that group. And then 2015, 6 picks. He had Connor McDavid, of course. And then the only other 2 guys so far, Caleb Jones, who's actually been a surprise, I guess, this year for the Oilers with some of their injuries, and Ethan Bear, who's an up-and-coming offensive defenseman playing down in the farm. And then, and then 2016, it's still too early, but Puljujarvi is the only guy to play a game in there. But they do have some guys coming up, like Tyler Benson, and then if you go from last year's draft, Evan Bouchard coming up. But yeah, if you have a lot more misses than hits throughout the draft, it's pretty tough, especially with their goaltending and their defense, if you don't have young guys coming up.
Well, the Oilers sure do love their Russian players, and one of the best ever Russian players may be coming back to the NHL. 40-year-old Pavel Datsyuk, whose contract expires at the end of this year in the KHL, is exploring the possibility of coming back. Do you see any team biting on that and looking at potentially bringing him back?
Man, I would love to see Datsyuk come back. Like, talk about like one of my favorite players to watch in the NHL. Like the way that he can just break ankles out there with his moves, but then still be a great 2-way player. He was one of my favorite players to watch. I'd like to see somebody give him a 1-year deal. Though it is tough with him being 40 years old right now and the speed of the game. But I think in maybe like a bottom 6 role, possibly, though I'm not sure where his offensive game is at right now with his age and playing 3 years over in Russia. Like we see, like what Kovalchuk's done has been decent so far, though he's a little younger than Datsyuk. But yeah, I'd love to see him back in the NHL next year.
Let's stay on the topic of Russians. Alex Ovechkin playing tonight has a potential chance to break some more records.
Yeah, so he's 1 point behind Sergei Fedorov for tying him for most points by a Russian-born player. Fedorov, 1,179 points in 1,248 games played. Ovechkin 1 point back, but he's only played 1,052 games played. So it's crazy that Ovechkin's already there behind Fedorov, and it's pretty special with Ovechkin had a chance to play with Fedorov towards the end of his career in Washington. So hopefully they're playing the Leafs tonight. He can get there. Otherwise, he's going to have to serve that 1-game suspension after the All-Star break. We're going to have to wait a little bit there. But going back to last night for Ovechkin, he scored his 23rd career hat trick, tying him with Yari Curry for most career hat tricks by a European-born player. And it was his 129th multi-goal game of his career, which is just insane. And it was his hat trick goal was his 400th career even strength goal. He's up to 643 goals on his career. Just insane.
That's all I've got for today. What else do you have there? I know there's a minor trade in the NHL, but
Yeah.
why don't you wrap us up?
Yeah, so just one minor trade that happened just a little bit after, I believe, our Tuesday night, Monday night, just after our show. It was Brad Hunt and a 2019 sixth rounder to the Minnesota Wild for a conditional 2019 fifth round pick. The condition on that is that the Golden Knights get the higher pick between Washington and Minnesota's fifth round picks that they own right now. Brad Hunt, 7 points, 13 games played, mostly a healthy scratch, but he'll help replace some of Matt Dumba's missing offense there with his basically season-ending injury. And then a couple other injuries to throw out. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's having an MRI on a knee injury. He'll miss possibly some time there. And Erik Karlsson is dealing with a lower body injury, will most likely miss the All-Star game this coming weekend. But that's all I got for today.
Perfect. Remember to like us and comment on our page on Facebook, B&B Hockey Talk, as well under the same name on YouTube, B&B Hockey Talk. Subscribe if you like these shows and you want to see just the shows, not all the GIFs that we post. So thank you once again for watching. We're going to be back on Friday. I know this is a bit of a slow week, All-Star weekend this weekend, but we'll be back on Friday again with our Canucks edition of B&B Hockey Talk. For Matt and for Aaron, you guys all have a fantastic evening.